Hey guys, how's it going? This is Amongst Friends podcast. My name is Nick. The other gentlemen on the screen will introduce themselves in a second. But essentially, we are three friends who live in Middle Tennessee. We really love video games. We live nearby friends for several years, and this is an opportunity for us to connect, play games together, talk about different topics, and hopefully entertain anyone who's watching. So we're going to do some quick intros. This is our first session. We got some fun stuff we're going to talk about and some fun ideas for the future. But we're just going to kind of do some quick intros, tell you who we are in a nutshell, and then have some fun conversation around games. So my name is Nick. I'm 33. I've been gaming for like 20 years. My kids game, my wife games. I play pretty much everything but sports games, so we'll get into that more later. But yeah, mainly play on PlayStation, also play on Switch, play a tiny bit on Xbox. Don't really play any PC games, but yeah, it's me in a nutshell. And I'll hand it off to Brandon.
I'm Brandon, 30. Probably been gaming for at least 25 years that I know of. Mostly grew up on sports games, but been more into RPGs and story-based games in the past few years. And so I'll pass it on to Barrett.
My name is Barrett. I'm 32. I was raised on Nintendos and PlayStation 1, so a lot of Mario, Zelda, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I've been gaming for at least 25 years as well, or 27 years, 26. It hurts to think of that number gets bigger. Uh, but yeah, I think today we're going to talk about our history with gaming, kind of where we started, um, what game, what games along the way really inspired us to move on to the next, and so on. So I'll kind of open the floor there, and whoever wants to start, what console did you start with? What was the first game that had you going like you couldn't put it down? It's all you thought about all the time. Whoever wants to pick that up.
I'll go. Yeah, I mean, so the first console I ever had was original Nintendo, the NES. Okay, and some friends gave it to us. We didn't buy it or anything. Um, but some family friends gave it to us, and they gave us the Nintendo. They gave us the Nintendo Zapper. So it had Mario Brothers 1 through 3. We had Duck Hunt. We had Contra, Bases Loaded, the DuckTales video game. These are all the ones I remember. But the one that like I really stuck with remember the most is probably Mario Brothers 3. And from what I remember, that was the first game I think I ever beat. It probably took 3 years, like just because I was learning how to play video games. But yeah, that was my introduction to video games, more or less, and that was the one that like made me really realize I love video games. What about you guys?
So I had a have a
Wow.
similar history, but through somebody else because I have an older brother, 5 years older than me, and his history was pretty much essentially what you had. So by the time I was able to play, yeah, we had the original NES, and I for sure remember playing, the first three Mario's and Duck Hunt. Um, but I think for the most part, for me, I might, like I said, I might have played a little bit of those, but it was primarily Super Nintendo and Super Mario World. Like I
Hmm.
catch myself like just humming the soundtrack to Super Mario World just like randomly throughout the day at times.
Yeah,
So what
me
about you,
too.
Barrett?
It's funny you say that.
Um, my intro with gaming started whenever I would go to a babysitter's house and they had the Sega Genesis. And Sonic 2
Mm,
was probably like my earliest memory of playing games. And then after that, like Pokemon happened. Pokemon,
mm,
the, and I can't even remember what order things happened in, but I remember like having to have a Game Boy Color and getting a Game Boy Color and getting Pokemon Blue and Pokemon cards, and that leads into all kinds of things. Um, but after the game, like the Game Boy was the biggest success in my child life, but then it was the Super Nintendo with Super Metroid. Um, I can't even remember the Super Mario's we had on it, but Mario Kart, Super Mario Kart, a lot of Super Nintendo, and then I remember the N64 and the PlayStation 1 times probably like where I really started like putting in time with Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time and Pokemon Stadium, a lot of Pokemon Stadium, um, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 specifically. That was, if I could remember the first game I ever beat, if it wasn't a Pokemon game, it was probably like beat the shit out of was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. That's my earliest memory of like a completion in a game.
So why do you guys think? I just thought this as you guys were talking, like, why do you guys think you stuck with games? Like, here we are, we're parents, we're dads, we're husbands. Like, I know a lot of guys and stuff who played games, guys and girls, sorry, who played games, but they stopped playing them when they got older, or it was just they were never really serious about it. But for me, it's like I just got more and more into it over the years now, where it's like part of my personality almost. But like, how would you guys describe why you did that? Like, what's kept you in it about games?
It's almost like, I think for me, it's just it became a hobby, and it's a hobby that I never have wanted to let go of. All the properties that I liked whenever I was younger grew and evolved into other things. And like, I mean, I was playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and then like years after that, I started skateboarding, and it was like a lot of my knowledge came from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and then through my stepdad, like it just ended up being a hobby that I could stick with, and I wouldn't. I mean, and now like I'm not gonna fall and hurt myself doing it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty
Wish
safe,
you would.
it's a pretty safe place.
Hey, with VR gaming now, there's no telling.
Oh my
Yeah, I'm
God.
not.
But
I got to count
That's a
myself
whole
out of that one.
podcast. Yeah.
I can't really say for me. I think part of it, like I picked it up at such an early age that it was a habit to some extent. I don't know that there was
Yeah.
any like one specific thing that stood out as to what I mean, like what hooked me in, but I don't. Yeah, so I don't know. It's just. I mean, it's just for as far back as I can remember, it's like one of the one things I've consistently done, and so yeah, I don't really know if there is a specific reason.
That's a good answer, because like basically wanted to say like I don't know why, but there's something about like the storytelling and like the characters of games that have just gotten me over the years. Like I don't know. I get real passionate about things, especially in things now that are nostalgic, but were nostalgic before nostalgic was cool. Um, there's some sort of just like something that grounds me in playing games, especially if it's a prop like Final Fantasy VII. Like sort of like a game that's been around for a long time. Picking it back up is like there's something in it that just like feels like it's part of my history. Especially because you kind of live through each of those whatever character you're playing, like you're living in that in a way. And it's something to immerse yourself in. Like had I not got into video games, gotten into like Dungeons and Dragons, I'd probably be a lot better at it. Just because like the immersion I have the patience to put in a video game.
I think for me too, like it's
Yeah.
also. I mean, and honestly, it's probably not something that I've really acknowledged as much over the years, but it's also one of the first like inclusive places or like spaces that I've really shared where it's like, I mean, just between us, like I mostly grew up on sports games, and even within that, there's like, well, there's sports and then there's racing, or there's extreme sports with Tony Hawk, or but there's so many different types of games that like it doesn't really matter what your background is, what your interests are. Like there's so many different ways that you can get hooked and still exist within this space with so many different people, and they're just literally went their own path. And so I think that's something
Hmm.
has something to do with it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally relate to like what both of you guys said. It's like I think I realized a while back like that video games, like when I was still, 10 or 11 years old, that like video games had like a super or provoked a super emotional response out of me when I was playing them, in a
Mm,
way that a lot of people talked about movies and books and music. And,
yeah.
when all those things are big to me, but like, Barry, you said this, it's like, but you're engaged, you're involved, you're a participant in the story, right? You have to play it. The fact that you're playing it,
Hmm.
become more invested. You're also like stimulated because of that. And like something I talked or thought about the other day was like I was like playing Elden Ring, right? And I was like, this is like the modern day Lord of the Rings, right? Not in every sense, but in the sense of like, hey, this is like this huge fantasy. There's this all this mythology and lore, and it's got all these characters and environments and lands and languages and things like that. And I like with that I realized like playing video games for me is like some people read books, like they read a book a week,
Yeah.
right? I think for me and probably for all of us, it's like I look at games the same way. Like it's a different experience, it's a different narrative, and so I try to play a lot of different stuff, but nothing has ever engaged me as much as a video game. Like no other piece of entertainment for some reason. That's just me personally, um, but yeah, like you guys said, totally. You
I think
mentioned
in
and Barry, you mentioned Final Fantasy VII. That's a big one.
I think for me too,
Big.
like that interaction is, I guess, probably the biggest element because, and I still love watching TVs and movies now, but they're maybe it's a product of gaming, but I'm to a point now where it's kind of harder to sit down and just watch something because I wanna be
Hmm.
Yeah.
involved. Um,
Yeah.
and gaming does give you that outlet, and even to a point where a lot of modern games now where you're in a cutscene, and if it's a live cutscene, it's the same effect of being like watching a show or a movie, but if you can actually interact or move around and see things from different perspectives, like it's like that next level almost.
Hmm. No,
There's
definitely.
you. I like what you said about it, like how Nick, what you said about like how games can provoke like more emotion for you than like a lot of
Hmm.
movies and stuff like that. Like I agree. There's something about video games and music for me that provoke the most emotion. And like like thinking about games like Kingdom Hearts that you don't
Hmm.
even know why it's making you cry, but it is ripping your heart out for no
Yeah.
reason. And there's something about like the engagement of like games like that, especially that you just like, I feel like sometimes I'm like chasing that dragon when I'm playing a game, like looking for another game that's going to pull me in as much as like certain games have over time. And I think that's why, like, I don't know, I'm less of a game completer nowadays just because like I try and start so many different things and there's not enough time to do so many things. And I have to like not buy a game on release because I'm still trying to beat games that came out 3 years ago.
Yeah,
But
there's so many good options now that it's hard to
mhm.
really go wrong. Um, but I know one game I wanted to mention. I don't know if you've played, and I think it's kind of changed my perspective on some gaming towards that interactive side is What Remains of Edith Finch. Like I don't know if y'all played it, but it was the same feeling of like
No.
reading a book, but actually being in it, and the way that game kind of like not necessarily tricks you, but kind of forces you down a path that like you think you know what you're doing, and it way of involving you and making you feel like you're part of the story to an extent. But that was in the past 4 or 5 years. That's probably one game that always comes to mind that just totally like blew my mind as far as like what games could be.
Mhm. What is
Yeah,
that?
you're
So
making me
tell.
think.
Oh, you said what's it called again? Something Edith Fitch.
What Remains of Edith Finch, or is it Filch
What
or Finch? I think
remains?
it's Finch. Um, but
Um,
While you're looking that up,
go ahead.
oh, sorry, go ahead, guys.
Now you
Is
go
it my
ahead.
turn? Whose turn is it?
you go right ahead. I do want to
No,
look
you're
at that
just
up.
making me think. You're just making me think, Brandon, like a game. You made me look back and like think, okay, what's a game that made me feel that way? To be like, wow, this was like a profound experience, right? That like really emotionally affected me, like a really good song or movie or book or something. And
And
one that like really sticks with me is Shadow of the Colossus.
yeah,
Um,
I haven't
and
haven't played it.
and it. Oh my gosh, you haven't played it. You
Ahead of
got to
its
play the.
time.
Oh, it's
Ahead of
still.
its time. It is a PlayStation 2 game that could have been a PlayStation 3 game at the end of its life cycle. Like
Yeah,
when get even like early PS4 games, like
it struggled on the PS2. But at the time, it didn't feel like it was
whole thing.
struggling. I didn't even know what frame rate was back then. Like,
Right.
so then the game was slowing down. I was like, that was really blurry. But you mentioned Barry. You mentioned like music and visuals and stuff like that. And I think something
Mhm.
I love about games, and we can talk about this more in the future, is like the number of different types of artists that are
Mhm.
required. And like video games require every type of artist, as illustrators and concept artists and writers and musicians and 3D designers and programmers and then all the marketing and stuff that goes into it too. But just the fact that like all those different groups have to work together, it's like a miracle that any of this stuff exists in the first place, and
Yeah.
that it's made well. But like Shadow of the Colossus, though, yeah, I remember beating that and just being like moved, right? And the music, it's still not just one of the best, some of the best music in a video game, but it's probably some of the best orchestral music I've ever heard in a game when you're like on the Colossi and they're throwing you around and stuff. But no, that was an
Mhm.
amazing game, and I think I probably played it 13 or 14 times. I mean, it's not a very long game, but yeah, Brandon,
Right.
you got to play that one. You owe it to you
Yeah,
owe it to yourself, man.
That
it's
so
Um,
been on
many
my
games
wish
you'll be
list for a
like
while.
you'll be playing it thinking of other
yeah.
things.
Yeah, it's
You'll be
been on my
playing
Edith
it
wish
Finch is
thinking
list
of
for
on
a
like,
my
while.
list, though.
oh,
Hmm.
I
I think
realized
Edith
I
Finch
have
is
Edith
on
Finch.
PS5.
It was on I think it was a PS Plus game one month because I
Yeah.
saw the picture, I recognized the icon. I'm pretty sure it's in my library, so I'll have
So
to check that
it's
out too.
it's only like it's been a couple years since I played it, but I think it's like 3 or 4 hours long. So yeah, it's not very long, but it was definitely one of those like I finished in like a day or two, and then immediately went to Bryson, my wife, and was like, "You have to play this, and I'll sit here and watch you." Like it was that way for me.
I'm
That's
downloading it
awesome.
right now. So to be continued, that
Yeah,
part of the conversation.
yeah, it's interesting. There's one specific part. I think it's in the last 2/3 or so of the game that I really want to get your input on, but I don't want to give any details away.
Yeah, no, don't. Is it gonna give me an existential crisis when I
I
when
don't
I
I
play
don't
it?
think so. I don't think so.
We'll see.
It's more of like a interactive story. Like there's like each specific like chapter has like its own mini game or something, but it's essentially about this. this this woman that goes back home and has inherited her like family house, and she's going like traveling back through like each room of the house because it belonged to like a different member of the family, and it's kind of like going through like each one of those members like their own significance to her. And
Oh, that's cool.
so yeah, I
Awesome.
think
Yeah,
there's a I
that
think it's
sounds neat.
definitely worth like a day or two to just go through.
I'll definitely check that out.
Like, I mean, since y'all are kind of like highlighting a game, I think
Yeah.
the game that stood out the most to me, and I mean, it's going to be thematic for where we're going to go with this conversation, but like music cues, um, story, characters, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, and
Crisis Core.
Zach's story to become a hero, the naivety of his character, but like still just striving to do good no matter what and protect his friends, and like I I just like if I had a hero growing up, that was one of them.
Mm.
Like just like that mentality, and I'm playing the game again and again and again, and like understanding like the burden of the Buster Sword, and it's the weight of like the whole like um analogy of what it kind of stands for. And there's a few songs from that soundtrack that I can listen to like right now and just start crying because it just that game meant so much to me. When I played it originally on the PSP, I remember beating it on the ride to Six Flags one summer with one of my best friends, Nick Am. He we're sitting in the back seat of my dad's van and going through the last cutscenes of that game whenever you're fighting a fight you can't fucking win, and just like going through like having someone there to kind of go through all those emotions with, and like just and he didn't even play the whole game with me. He just like saw the end and like, dude, this is brutal. But like the whole ending of that game for some reason is just like burned into my brain. It moved me in it still does.
I haven't played Crisis Core. I think we talked about it a little bit, but now I'm like sold on it. I'm like, okay, I gotta check this out. But especially with
Zach, you get
Zach's
such
awesome,
a
apparently.
well, you get a more of an idea of like where Cloud came from too, and you see his like kind of intro and
Mm-hmm.
understand like that the burden that was passed on to Zach passed on to Cloud, and it makes Cloud's character for Seven make so much sense, where he's like kind of unapproachable and kind of an asshole in the beginning, and just like I'm only in it for the money, and just like that dude's been through so much, but seeing kind of like how that came down the line to and fell to him in a way is, I don't know, makes it mean a lot more, I guess, at least personally.
Yeah. You know, a game that I kind of felt that way about was BioShock 2, right? So like I loved all the BioShock games, but BioShock 2 is really cool because um, I remember what stuck with me a lot was, and I might have had kids at the time, they're young, but you get to the end of the game. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't played it, but let's just say they make you. I felt like a parent in context of the story at the end of the game, and like that you had a real relationship with one of the characters. And I just remember being like, yeah, like you're in it for this a character who's now you identify as family. um
Mhm.
and that stuck with me a lot. Like I think that's something that game did better than any of the games in the series. It's only 3 games, but you know what I mean. um but that stuck with me
That
for a while. I was like, felt like I had a bond, I guess, with the character, or characters in the game. But yeah, I totally get where
of the
you're
three
coming from.
BioShock 2 for sure. Like that was the height
Yeah.
of that whole series. Like the
Yeah,
other
well,
games, they're all great in my opinion, but like 2, it especially for like an adventure in Rapture, 2 was incredible.
Yeah. Well, and I think like BioShock Infinite, I won't go into too much detail, of course, but like I think it did a lot of things, or tried to do a lot of things that actually BioShock 2 had already done with that whole relationship and like relationship with an NPC character and stuff, and telling that story. So I think BioShock Infinite did it really well too. It's just that it was more of something that you had already gotten introduced to. But yeah, no, I remember unbelievable hype for BioShock 2, and just played that game probably 10 times as well. So yeah.
I need to revisit them with the Ezio series of Assassin's Creed games too. It's what Brotherhood, Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations. I remember really liking Ezio's whole arc, and kind of falling out of Assassin's Creed as it strayed further away from that arc. I just really liked growing up with this guy. You know, you see him in his youth, middle, and all the way up to his death, and it just being like, I mean, again, it's something I need to revisit, but I do remember being like really into that series specifically.
Yeah, those games are probably like a few of the games like I actually completed, like more so before I started getting into more RPGs and stuff. Um, because like even though there is the sci-fi element with the Animus, the way they handled going back in time to those ancestors, like it felt like a pseudo historic like nonfiction almost, and and I really like that aspect of it, and was kind of disappointed how like some of the I guess the newer entries have kind of like strayed from that a little bit. But yeah, those games definitely have, I guess, pushed me further to the story driven elements of games.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, I think that's that's a big piece of like I think probably what's kept us around from. It's just that engagement, like you said, not just with the playing them, but like the story as well. It's like I think for some people it feels like it's like a boundary to get past, like the fact that they have to play it to get to the story. I think it's also why you see like a lot of people watching things like this, and people people playing games, people talking about games, and just streaming that versus even playing it themselves, because there are some amazing stories. And you look like something like The Last of Us, that gets turned into a TV show that's essentially the cutscenes, right? For the most part, from the game,
like sometimes verbatim.
Yeah, in a way that's like trippy, right?
Even some of the gameplay verbatim to like just like walking through an area. It's like, oh, this looks like I'm like over the shoulder.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, you're absolutely right, dude. There was one part that was so funny. He was like, "Can I get a boost?" Like, so like
the whole like live.
Yes, they did that, and then there was a part where like someone like holds up a fallen bookshelf with their back as the other character walks by, and you're just like, okay, yeah, that
a cinematic moment in the game.
It's canon right there, guys. Like that
I think of like one of the
all
early houses walking through the background of the bottom floor was water, and you're walking through the water.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't watched the show yet, but I'd say I've I finished the second game like early last year, so coming up on a year ago since I played it, and I have you both played both games?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna be playing, but real quick, I'm gonna be playing it again when it releases on PS5 this month. So
It is a game. Can I real quick tell you my funny history with The Last of Us?
Yeah.
I went to the midnight
Please.
release with my brother-in-law Austin, and only because he needed someone to go with him. I wasn't really as interested in it. I think I wasn't really feeling zombies at the time. I don't remember why, but
Yeah.
wasn't there for the game. But they had a console set up at the midnight release at GameStop where you could play the game. Like, we're up there at 10 o'clock. I think I played the game for an hour and a half with an audience of people and tried to pass the controller so many times, and everyone just wanted to watch me play. Like, they were all fine with watching it. So that's the most I've played The Last of Us, was standing in GameStop. But I have watched two friends play through the game. So I've basically treated The Last of Us as a movie ever since it's come out. Because I've only experienced, other than playing it the one time at the midnight release, I've only experienced it through watching Austin play it and another friend of mine, Cody. And but what was funny, I left GameStop that night with a Nintendo 3DS and Animal Crossing. That's what I bagged that night. It was like, everyone's here for that. I was like, can I buy something other than Last of Us? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I was like, I lost my 3DS a few years ago, so I think I want to get back in Animal Crossing.
Nice.
But
That's so funny those came out.
Leading into I didn't play the second one either, but I do believe that those games are hyped for a reason, and it's Naughty Dog, and Crash Bandicoot is one of those games that kept me on the PlayStation 1. Crash Bandicoot Warped.
Yeah,
was one of my favorite games as a kid.
For me, for both of the games, I didn't play either one until, like I said, I didn't play the second one until last year, and it was probably like 5-6 months before that I actually finished the first one. Like I'd started it on PS3, and I probably played maybe a few hours of it, but there was something that really bugged me with the AI, where like your partner could just run right in front of enemies while
Yeah.
you're sneaking around, and like didn't detect anything. So that really turned me off to it in the beginning. But like I said, I revisited those. I haven't played the remaster, but played back through those, and yeah, I really like the elements of, even though there are a lot of resources to find, like how they use that scarcity to create tense moments of, like, oh, I've got to make every bullet count, or but I've always
taken
kind
out of
of,
Resident Evil's book.
yeah, and I held off on playing them mainly because of the way the second one was received. But after playing it, like there's so much, like, the social discourse around that was such nonsense, because I don't know, there's just I get that everybody's got their own perspective in a story, but I don't know, just a lot of the opinions I heard around the second game is just, it felt baseless. Like I don't know how else to explain it, but I thought it was a well done story, and I think it was just, I don't know, I think people got in their feelings too much about, one specific character, and then it didn't matter what the other characters did. And but yeah, I'm glad I played
Yeah.
both of those, and like it's still, like, from an emotional standpoint, that second game it is, from a storytelling standpoint, it's one of the best games I've ever played.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I remember all the discourse about Last of Us 2, and I didn't play it either for the longest time. I was just like, what is this garbage? I played it, and I thought it made so much sense the direction they went in. It was kind of, I'll just say, devil's advocate from a story's perspective of what the characters do and what happens to characters, to be like, yeah, it's pretty justified, you know? Um, but for some reason, I almost felt like something was wrong with me, like psychologically, that I wasn't as mad about it as a lot of people were. I was like, maybe I'm like not choosing the right side of perspectives for this story. But I'm really excited to see, and we'll have to maybe have a longer conversation about this in the future. But just talking about, that show and other movies and shows where people who played the game know, you know, what how the story's gonna go, but people who are seeing the show for the first time and stuff are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe they did that." And you're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that when that was shocking, 7 years ago or whatever these games came out." But um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
haven't I
those are
haven't.
some.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say that I think Last of Us, and there's a couple of games come to mind, have the best storytelling I can probably think of in a game. I don't know if I always had that much fun playing them. Like the gameplay isn't what I remember, and that's okay, I think, for some games. Um, but it's hard for me to say like I love those games. I love the stories. I actually don't know if I love the gameplay itself, but it does kind of feel like you just get well, once again, it feels like more you're participating in a movie. And that's another thing that's great about games. Is some games are just like that. Other games have no story, right? But or maybe they have a story, but it's all hidden in menus and like picking up texts and stuff like that. But yeah, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, that's why I love video games. You get all these different options too about what kind of experience you're gonna get, you know?
Well, I think for the most part,
What were you gonna say, Brandon?
I was just gonna say, I think for the most part, I think I'm on the same page with you there as far as like not necessarily loving the game of it, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I can also say that much like Assassin's Creed, around that same time, like the very few RPGs that I got into were like Tomb Raider and Uncharted, and obviously with Uncharted from Naughty Dog, it was stepping going from that into Last of Us. Obviously, the gameplay felt very familiar from a mechanic standpoint, but the reason I do like the gameplay of it is because there was the issue where with Uncharted where a lot of the gunplay and stuff would just I mean it was an action movie to an extent. I mean to that end where ammo's endless, like enemies are almost endless to an extent, and so going from that to The Last of Us, it's like okay now all of these actions I'm taking have a little more gravity to them. Whereas I think that was one of my complaints from Uncharted, where I loved all those games, but there was an extent. It's like from a storytelling standpoint, how many people can this guy kill, and it still be like immersive and I think The Last of Us kind of blended both that storytelling and giving gravity to what you're actually doing and how you interact with it.
No, that's a great point because like I was playing Last of Us, like you straight up feel like you're murdering people. Like when you're playing the game, like
Yeah,
it does not cut away from that feeling. But you also know that like the characters feel justified in
yeah,
doing it based off of the situations they're in and stuff like that. But other games I've played, like oh god, I can't even remember. Oh, maybe it was like Hogwarts Legacy, where I was like, man, I've killed like 1,000 people in this game, and I'm like some 16-year-old student, and
And
I'm
I'm
like, I
going to
guess that's
school like
kind of
everything's fine.
dude. I
yeah, and it's
turned this
like
dude into like a chicken or something, and he blew up, and I was like, and my character just like walks away from it, and I was just like, wow, that was pretty
The
bad.
last
And
time
I
I
was gonna
played
go
the
to
game,
class.
I went against my character's morals and learned the killing curse. And
Dude.
it went completely, you had to do it. You had to go this certain way. And it complete like my character went off script for one cutscene just so I could get that fuck you can anybody. And then you go to school and you're in fucking you know, uh whatever. You're in Flitwick's class or whoever, and you're like learning how to levitate a fucking. I love I love it, and I dislike it because it it's really fun to like have all the
Yeah.
spells and do all that shit, but at the same time, it did take me out of it a little bit. I was like, well, that was fun, but I'm probably not going to put that one back on my.
Yeah, I will say
Especially
like
the
Yeah,
trophy.
a game like that, and then the Shadow of Mordor games, like those are
Mm,
the that what you mentioned is like the one aspect of like those games that kind of somewhat ruins the immersion. Like Hogwarts Legacy was still probably my favorite game of last year, but there was
yeah,
an immersion breaking thing there where it's like, okay,
yeah.
I've probably killed like 200 300 people, and it's like, and I'm just a regular student at this school. Voldemort kills like 10 people, and he's like just the worst person in the history of that universe.
creating Horcruxes, separating his soul into pieces. Like
So
every
I,
time you kill someone, it separates your soul into another piece. Like if your character in Hogwarts Legacy had Horcruxes, how many do you think you would have?
All of them,
All of
all the
them.
Horcruxes. Dude, it's so funny. It's like when I was playing the game and I was realizing I was like everything my character said had been the most mild mannered response I've ever heard. Ever like the most diplomatic character I've ever seen. I'm like, what's he gonna say to calm the situation? And he says it every single time. It's just like it's like someone comes up to you and they're like, yeah, someone stole something from me, so I want to kill their family. And you're like, that must have been really hard for you when they stole that. I'm like, how is this infinite empathy coming out of this character? But yeah, as soon as I learned that killing curse and used it on a goblin, I was like, oh, it did pull me out of the experience a little bit when
It's
that
like not a
happened,
bad thing. But I
it's
feel like
definitely a
with
video game.
like Hogwarts Legacy, it's something that's fun to laugh about,
It's
like in
quirky,
that
man.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did like I said
yeah,
with it and stuff like Shadow of Mordor, like I definitely view those as like alternate timeline in that extent. Um, but yeah, I mean, if they do make a sequel to Legacy, like I want more role playing aspects where I can just be like in dialogue, just be total asshole to everybody. Cause yeah,
Yeah.
there were too many of those moments where like between cutscenes, I don't know how many people I killed, and then like I'm just the nicest guy as soon as
Yeah,
I
I want
go
some
into
like
dialogue.
Commander Shepard Mass Effect
yes.
options
I was just
where I
thinking
can
that.
ruin relationships with some of the shit that I say.
Dude, I think there should always be a killing curse option at the bottom of every
Yeah,
dialogue tree.
Yeah,
Just at any moment. Just green magic just flares up. And it's just like, all
mm,
right, cool. Um, yeah, there could be some hilarious stuff that comes as that. But yeah, no, they put so much in that game too, to where I was like, okay, I get it. They couldn't design a morality system that made sense out of this because
yeah.
Hogwarts would be like aligned against you, like like the
No,
entire
you
army.
wouldn't be able to get back
Uh,
in.
no, not at all. Um, but that's something else that's like fun about games too. Is like there's some games that take themselves really seriously that are like really polished. Like we talked about Final Fantasy 16 earlier, that like I didn't feel like I got taken out of the experience the entire time I played it, and so it's memorable for that reason. But then there are other games that are just a complete train wreck, right? Like Goat Simulator 3 or whatever, and but they're memorable because of that, right? And it's just like such
Mm,
a huge different experience, and it just hasn't gotten boring to me, right? Like I think that's the
mm,
thing, is like with all these different games and the games that are coming out, um, it's just they keep getting better. And that like I could go on forever about how good games have gotten in such a short amount of time, to where it's like the stuff that comes out now, it's like I'm picky about it, but you're just looking at it going like it's unbelievable compared to what we played, talking about original Nintendo and Super Nintendo. It's unbelievable what we're getting to play and how good TVs are
mm,
and graphics are and load times are gone and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's like a lot of stuff like movies and stuff. It's like you're like, they don't make them like they used to. And the same can be true for video games, but overall, most of the things, um, the games are getting better, or you're getting a remake of a game that you loved, and that's a cool thing too. And they do, and the different where like with movies, where if you get a remake, it's like usually not a good experience. Like, oh no, they're recasting this. But with a video game like wink wink Final Fantasy VII remake, it's like, oh, the original's still awesome, but this is better in a lot of ways than the original. So, just another reason I would argue that like video games are like the best medium, at least have the greatest opportunity to be the best medium out of different types of entertainment, in my opinion.
I was gonna have a question about like, did so in the era of like PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, did gamer score and trophies fuel what you decided to play, and like, did it help you branch out and try new things because you wanted to boost your gamer score? Because I was definitely guilty of that. Like, just trying to build up a gamer score and playing games that were like easy to, 100% or something. It, like, I was gonna say, kind of to relate to Brandon and sports games. I remember having a weekend of NBA Street Home Court, and it was like a ridiculous over the top basketball game where you could like do like double dunks and shit, and like it was just ridiculous. But the achievements would give you like 90 a gamer score, 100 gamer score, and it was a short game. It only had like 10 achievements, and it was actually really fun to play like two player, against somebody. Did y'all ever have like, what was your, it's kind of a conversation curve, but like, what was your relationship with like gamer score and trophies?
So
Because I
I
feel
know
like that's where I got even more engaged.
for me, for like that generation PS3 and 360, like I don't remember getting those consoles until like later in the cycle. So like I was if it was more of a competition of like gamer score with friends, I was so far behind that there's really no catching up. But I do remember
Mm.
vaguely at the beginning of like the PS4 and Xbox One era, like where I got into that a little bit just because like I don't know if it's just the way my dashboard was set up, but it was a little more front and center of like, oh, here's what your friends did this month. So there was a little bit of that then,
Yeah.
especially with games with gold where you're getting a free game every month. There's so many of those that I would play just because they were free and would get
Yeah.
gamer score. But no, it wasn't ever really that big of an aspect for me.
Yeah, no, not at all. I feel like I just recently got more into trophies and gamer score and all that different stuff. And like, well, I looked at my gamer score recently and I was like, oh my God, I've got a pretty big score on Xbox, but it wasn't because I tried to get them. It's like I finished like the first third of like 90 games. It's amazing how many
Yeah.
points you can get that way. But no, like dude, it's so funny. I didn't even understand how gamer score worked or what the appeal was for a long time. I don't think it was until like PlayStation, for some reason, just recently, have they've integrated trophies. And like you said, Brandon, like that they compare like your trophies to your friends, and they give you notifications about what your friends got. And um, also the trophies have gotten more clear about what you have to do to unlock them. And they've done things like PlayStation Stars. I don't know if you guys have that, but you get the actual points that you can cash in. No joke, I've probably gotten like $40 in PlayStation credit from getting trophies. So that's a big thing. And Xbox did something similar. They did it before PlayStation, I
Yeah,
believe, where you could
Yeah.
get, yeah, the Game Pass credits and stuff like that. So yeah, now it's really cool, and it's a really nice reward. Like you get that endorphin burst when you see the trophy pop up, and they do all kinds of cool stuff with it. But no, to answer your question, um, that didn't, no, at the time it didn't influence me at all. Like I wasn't even really
Mm.
aware of what it meant, which is really interesting hearing what you guys have to say, because you guys are a lot more aware of it than I was. So yeah, I
yeah.
think I was just out of touch with probably like how that part of the technology worked at the
I had a
time.
problem. I had a problem. Like,
Not anymore though, right?
no, not anymore. I was like, Xbox 360 started really competitive gaming for me because I mean Halo and shit like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I would go as far as like when they would give out the random games of gold every month, and I think 1 month Mortal Kombat 3 arcade was free. I get it, and it gave me a trophy for like 7 gamer score or something odd, which normally gamer score goes in 5 to 10. It's either a 5 or 10 incremental. It's not like odd numbers, but some developers have a sense of humor that there's probably like this isn't going to affect anyone, but there's someone out there that this is going to piss off whenever they get 1 gamer score from from something, whenever everything else is given 5 or 10 increments of that. But I would end up like getting games just like if a game made my gamer score an uneven number, like not an increment of 5, I would get another game just to get 1 trophy or 1 achievement that would even that back out. And it was like a running joke with my gamer score and like friends that I played with back then that I cared too much about it. Obviously, from the conversation I'm having here, I'm the one that's like, okay, well, clearly, clearly I had a problem, but I had a buddy download or that had DJ Hero that I think my gamer score was like 59 at the end of it, and there's a trophy in DJ Hero to get 1 so it would even it out. So he like downloaded my account and got that achievement for me so it would even it back out one time. There's like multiple instances of my gamer score going to an odd number and having to fucking fix it because I was so obsessed with it.
Hey, just real quick, I just want to call out that my PlayStation trophy score is higher than both of y'all's. I just checked it while we were talking.
Well, I
It
just got
fucking
my
would be
first
too.
platinum like a week and a half ago, so if that tells you anything.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say anything, but
Since we're
yeah,
on
I
the
got a pretty.
topic, never cared
Yeah, I
about
just
it,
wanted
but
to
it's higher than both of
well,
yours.
I will say like one good thing and one bad thing about it though, and
yeah.
just to end on positive with it, I will say the bad thing first was um, the one thing that deterred me from caring about stuff is I knew there were some games that I would never complete in that sense with gamer score trophies because they would include like the most egregious like multiplayer
Mm.
trophy,
Yeah.
and it's like okay, I'm never
Halo
going to
2.
get that just because I'm never going to be able to put the amount of time in that it would take to get there. But the one good thing I will say, and if there are some of those trophies where there might be a certain aspect of a game like you'll never try out unless you know that it is a trophy or something. Or it could just be like a Easter egg or something where Spider-Man 2 for instance, like one of the very last achievement
Yeah.
or trophies that I got was going to the baseball stadium and running like around the bases. And just like
Yeah.
small like little Easter egg things like that. That's like I never even would have went to that specific part of the map if not for that. So it's nice that there is as big as games are, they're able to put just small things like honestly insignificant in the for the game itself, but just small little tidbit that like now that'll always be a memory I have of that. If even as minuscule as it is, like stuff like that would definitely is a I guess a benefit to what trophies can be.
It can help how you experience the game for sure. Like if you need some sort of goal setting or something to like keep you
Mhm.
engaged with it. Like and I think well like whenever I got my Xbox 360, that was I just went straight into that. Like straight into like looking at achievements, and I think Fable 2 is what did it to me because it had so many. It had so many achievements in it, and I remember like hopefully trying to get every achievement in that game because like I remember playing the game and like every 5 minutes an achievement would pop up, and it's like getting that dopamine hit at a young age and not like what's going on, what is this feeling, why do I keep going for these?
I think, I think now they're great. Like, I think, I won't go off on a rant on this, but I think that's one of the things that Nintendo Switch is actually missing. Once you get it on
Yes.
PlayStation and Xbox, you're like, I kind of want it's more of a centralized tracker across all your games that like crunches up a score, right? And that's what's cool about it. Not in addition to the fact that you like getting those little pop-ups, right? You like getting those little notices that say you achieved something. But like my engagement overall with trophies, like just to add on to what you were saying, Brandon, is like it depends on the game because like I'm looking at like Dead Space right now, right? One of the trophies, and someone probably correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like one of the trophies is beat the game with one weapon. And I'm like, why would I want to play the whole game with just a pistol or just a shotgun when you have like 9 different weapons to choose from? So like I'm never going to screw with that. Like I'm not going to play 10 or 12 hours and there's like 15 games in my backlog just to get a platinum trophy. And I hate trophies like that. Like I could
Yeah.
rant about like, it's like ride, like I remember one of Darksiders that I will rant about for a second. The original Darksiders, and it was like run like 1,000 miles on your horse or something like that. And I'm like, there's not a single Hyrule field in the original Darksiders, dude. Like it's all cities and linear pathways for the most part. And I'm like, well, I'm never gonna get that. And it was like the only trophy or achievement I had left to get in the game to get like 100%. But I'm just like, that's not even fun. So yeah, but then there are other games like Spider-Man or God of War, like the most recent ones in the series. They were pretty easy. Like you had to try to get all the trophies or achievements, but it wasn't like you had to just, I don't know, walk around every city block corner for, the entire Manhattan island,
Yeah,
So
I don't remember
that's my thoughts on that.
for Spider-Man. I don't remember there being like a trophy that either felt like a waste of my time or felt like it made the game less enjoyable. And I think that's for that type of
Yeah, exactly.
that
Yep.
type of system. That's like the one thing I look for. Like I'll do it if it feels like it's going to improve my experience with the game. And like you said, like there's a lot of those to where to play a game like Dead Space with one weapon, like it doesn't even seem like it worth the time because it don't unless you just like the challenge of it. Like it, I don't see how that's enjoyable.
There's
Yeah.
definitely some games that have that like a few unachievables that are like only the most hardcore of the hardcore of the hardcore players are going to end up getting this, and it's geared towards that. I definitely don't, especially whenever there's like one or two that are just like, I'm never going to fucking get that. Those are definitely bummers. And as much as I've talked about like being someone that went after like searching for achievements, I've only ever gotten 2 platinum trophies. And I think I 100%ed like 4 games on the Xbox 360. But there was just something about like and also like I've always been surrounded by people that like I'm the only one that gives a fuck about this. But like everyone else is like, yeah, I don't give a shit. It takes away from my experience of the game. And I'm like, I don't know. I like, even if I don't get all of them, it was the enjoyment I got along the way just kind of added to it. And it was a score with Xbox. It's a score that you could like hang over your buddies and like, they wouldn't care until they did care about some shit, especially if we're all playing the same game and I start getting different achievements and it starts like getting us to do more because like, oh yeah, I want to get those. Like, yeah, we should do that. Halo 3 Vidmasters achievements, fucking shit like that.
Oh, I definitely hung Spider-Man over my son's head. Like he come back from his bio
Yeah.
dads, and I was like, "You may have beat the game before me, but you didn't do this." And I showed him the trophy, and he's like, "Oh my gosh!"
It's so much fun competing with your friends and kids over who beat a game first or something like that.
Yeah.
I did that. It was like Elden Ring. When Elden Ring came out, my wife Brandy, and my 2 sons were all playing it at the same time. Like we had to plan it like 6 months in advance how that was even going to be possible. Like, okay, like how many like accounts do we have to buy this on so that doesn't lock us out when we all try to log on to it and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, back to what you said about like this, the topic of the trophies and stuff in general. I think I think it's a cool thing. I don't think it's bad or good. I think it depends on how each developer implements it and stuff.
Mm.
But it does make me curious. So you made me think about other stuff. Like as we're segueing the conversation, is like, is there something like around modern games that you think is like in consoles and stuff that's like really awesome that you like? That's like a recent thing that systems have done, whether it's like online features or just like the interface or just something you see in games like that you really like. If that
Can you
question
give an
makes sense.
example?
Yeah, like well, I'll give an easy one, right? The best thing like about like modern gaming right now, like if you're on PS5 or even on a good or decent PC, is like virtually no load times, right? Like that's huge. Like that's something like I feel like we've already gotten used to really quick in this generation. But like I was just like loading up a game, the PS4 game, and it's I've got it downloaded on a hard disk drive, right? Because I'm not going to fill my SSD with all these older games. But I was just like 30 seconds. I'm like, who's got that kind of time? I was like, it took like one death for me to be like, no, I'm gonna go play something else. So yeah, like that, or like another thing that like I thought of is like just having like the activity feeds for your games is something I was looking at. Like if there's DLC, if there's a new trailer for a new character, like just having all this information on your dashboard, like just makes it feel live and interactive. And maybe that's not something that like just new games have done. Maybe they've been doing that since Xbox Live went live. But I just feel like it's done a lot, or it's done really well nowadays to where when you turn on your console, it seems like there's like a live event happening with some type of game, or some kind of patch that went live that added some type of content. So like I think that's keeps me excited in turning on my console every day and stuff like that. So I guess those are two examples.
I like how most games on like the newest generation consoles, it seems like if you have a ride in the game, it's a seamless click of a button,
Yeah.
like Elden Ring, you're on your
Yeah.
horse. Final Fantasy 16, whistle your chocobos right there. Like a lot more like transportational with that helps, especially with like loading times. And also,
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation 5 has the resume activity option. And I
Yes.
love that because, like, if my PlayStation goes into sleep mode, or I could, pick up a game I haven't played in a while and hit resume activity, and I don't have to go through the whole fucking menu. I could just hit right there, right where I left off when I put the controller down.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a great one. I didn't even think of that. Like you're right. A lot of games do that where you just get your transportation. I bet.
That's what's helped me with Final Fantasy, man,
Yeah.
because I mean, most of most of the other ones, like if I go back and play Final Fantasy X, just like mashing A to get through, or mashing X to get through all the cutscenes in the beginning, get to the menu, start the game, wait for it to load while it's giving like biographies of all the characters and you're waiting. Like being able to skip all that and just dive right back into the story you're trying to experience or whatever is really good. I love that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely love that feature. And I want to touch on one thing because I shit on how behind the times Pokemon games are with how much money they make.
Mhm.
But they were one of the first with like a one button transportation with the bike. Like, oh, just press select and
Yeah.
then you're on your back.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a good call out.
And you had to map it too. You had
Yeah,
like it gave you the option and made the option like a feature. It's like, and now you can map this button to Y, so you pull it right out or whatever. Yeah, I love
yeah.
What a
ahead of
revelation.
its time.
But no, I do
That's so
think
funny.
quick resume has been a big feature, especially in the past year where I do have a backlog of games I'm trying to finish, and something like well, before Spider-Man, I think the last game I completed was Starfield, and it was one of those where like I got an Xbox just for that, and just being able to turn it on and just literally jump right in wherever I left off instead of having to like wait for the system to boot up, wait to go through all the load menus and all the useless stuff. But that has been one of the better features.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there's some killer loading music out there, or like menu music.
Oh
Like
yeah,
some games, there's some games out there that could compete for having the best like menu music. But it is nice to also have the option to just not have to watch it all for the 100th time.
yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with the guys who made Horizon Forbidden West, and they had hints on the load screens, but
It's so
the load
fast.
screens are so fast, and I don't know if you tried it out. You may have heard of this brand. The load screens are so fast they had to add the option to where you have to hit X once it loads because people weren't getting to see the hints, and like that's just such a drastic difference. That being said, man, maybe this is a fun one. Like worse load, like yeah, you're right. There are some fun load screens. Like I remember Skyrim. That had long load screens, but it had the 3D models you could view,
Yeah,
and you could rotate like the
and a
statues of the
description of it.
dragons. Yeah, it was like a
Mm.
prop, and I was like, that's a great little thing to add. But man, I'll tell you, one game that nearly sent me to like the asylum was like Bloodborne. Had like a minute and I want to say minute and 20 or minute 30-second load times. Maybe it was just my PlayStation or something, but man, for a game where you die within like 20 seconds of playing, I was like, I'm getting 20 seconds. Like I literally was doing the math. I was like, I'm getting like 20 seconds of play time to every minute and 20 seconds of load screen. I was like, so that's a pretty big margin of load time here, and then you're just furious. You're just furious that you died and lost all your souls, and you're like, and now I get to sit here at the bus stop for a minute and 20 seconds. Yeah, so I don't know, that's a big thing. Like just the accessibility. I think like just being able to like know that you don't have to plan 5 minutes just to get into the game now is
Oh,
is
Yeah.
big, you know.
one of the most egregious games as far as load times go. Um, I know you probably don't recognize it, but my shirt's a pro wrestling shirt. I've always been a huge wrestling fan, and one of the first games I got back on the original PlayStation was SmackDown 2 Know Your Role, and I'm sure that game has like one of the worst reputations for load times. I'm sure there's probably countless YouTube videos you could look up to witness it. But it was so egregious to where you would start at the main menu, like say you go to options, load menu, like and then within options go to controller settings, load menu, and like I said, this is PS1, so like it couldn't have been any shorter than a minute. Like they all had to be like a minute plus. It feels like, at least as a kid, it felt like it was like you could go read a book, you could go use the restroom, you could go eat dinner, and like come back and like you're still waiting on it. So if you ever find the time and you ever like remember it, you should look up some videos on that.
It's
See,
just
like
crazy.
I'm trying to you mentioned Bloodborne loading times don't stand out to me too much.
Oh,
I believe you on the SmackDown game because I've sat through watching family members play those games in the past, like when we're all like, at a Christmas, we're all at someone's house. I remember watching someone play some of the old, but um, for me, like it's one of my favorite games. But Hunt on before the PlayStation 5, I loved it, but seeing what like my friend Nick goes through trying to load into a game and how long it takes, it is the most nightmarish like loading time that I think I've experienced in a game. I can't think of any like I know there's been plenty of them where it's just like Jesus Christ, this is taking forever. But most of the time, I think those games are multiplayer and you're dealing with nat types.
Yeah, there's
But
been just a
Hunt
just
was
a
trying to do too much on older consoles.
yeah. I know just a few times like we've played that together, and like Nick or either Nick or Noah, I think, be in the party, and I know the I know. I mean, I know Noah's not now, but like when they were still playing on PS4 and stuff, and I'd be on PS5, it's like the match would start before, and like we're like
Hmm.
a quarter of the way across the map
Loaded in
before they
halfway
even
across the
load
map.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're still looking at a loading bar, and it's like, only this much out of, yeah.
The only other game I
So that's
You just
like
really,
can't go
the
back.
main.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you would think it would be faster to just like restart the game and try again.
Sometimes it
But that
is.
loading bar just started over.
The only other
But
game
yeah,
I've had
that's
I've had a scenario similar to that is, you know, with my wife and my son, we play Fortnite together from time to time, and in one instance, it's a cool feature with crossplay because we are all playing on a different system. Like I'll play on PC, my wife will play on PS5, and right now my son's still playing on an Xbox One, and it's a similar situation. It's not as bad, but yeah, like we'll load into the lobby, like the countdown will start, and like me and my wife are sitting there emoting or something with all the other people in the lobby, and then my son doesn't load in until there's like 5 seconds left on the countdown. So it's definitely not as egregious, but it does happen.
Can't forget the honorable mention of Skyrim on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Those loading times were what nightmares were made out of. I mean, it was they had to add more models later to those cutscenes because you would see they would shuffle through like the same 10 different, you know, they definitely didn't have as much as they have like now on the anniversary edition and stuff, but the loading times in Skyrim, they were so bad.
that's like another thing too. Like loading times weren't just bad because they were loading times, but like it was a whole new consequence to dying in a game. Like
Yeah.
it was like
For
you're
sure.
like, I don't want to sit through this, right? And like dying in a game now, especially with half the games being roguelikes, you know, um,
Mm.
it's like there's no penalty, and it's kind of great, right? In a lot of ways. But boy, did I have like some terror with some of those games where I was like, oh my God, or like I have to leave now. I can't sit through a load screen.
Mm.
And online gaming was just that much slower because of it. So yeah, no, that's
But at the
yeah,
same
it was
time,
some long. But
I do think that there are some benefits to that because that loading screen sometimes you just gives you a chance to breathe. Like there was
mm-hmm,
just recently with Spider-Man 2, there's a lot of the Mysterium challenges where
mm-hmm.
there's like specific time limits you've got to beat to complete them, and there was one specific challenge I had to do, and right as soon as you started the challenge, there's like a short dialogue with one of the NPCs standing in front of you, and the load times were so fast, and I was like failing so fast that I heard that same dialogue line like so many times within a short amount of time. Like I literally just like I wanted to shut everything off. Like I'm tired of hearing this NPC talk and say the same line over and over
Mm.
again. So I definitely do like it's probably very few and far between, but there are times where just a little bit of space to breathe is probably a good thing.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of
And
that.
the skip cutscene option
Oh
also.
yes, yeah.
Oh, that
Paired
is a
with
good
that, it's
feature.
okay. Yeah. That's a good
You
feature.
know,
Yeah. Long
you
loading
guys.
times need a skip cutscene option.
Oh, yeah, like okay, yeah. If you got to watch that cutscene every time
Oh
before the
Yeah.
yeah.
If I'm
boss
gonna
fight,
sit through this fucking loading screen, then I better be able to skip that cutscene whenever it's over. Because
that is an offensive thing. Yep.
if I've gotta hear fucking some Kingdom Hearts character say the
Oh,
same thing again and again
oh,
and
you're right.
again.
Yeah, you're right. Kingdom Hearts was the worst about that type of thing. You're like, well,
Yeah.
there's no way for me to navigate this. I can't walk away. and go eat
Yeah.
something because it's not going to pause itself when it gets to the end of the cutscene, and I can't skip the cutscene. So
fucking
I'm literally trapped here by the developer to watch this.
yeah,
Like,
that fucking that
like
Tarzan
Goofy
level with the
dies.
chameleon. I'll never forget. I'll never forget fighting the chameleon at the end of Kingdom Hearts or in Kingdom Hearts 1 on the Tarzan level and hearing that fucking dialogue setting that boss fight up. Oh,
Yeah, I hated
Cracks me
that
up,
fight.
dude. Cracks. That's so well. That fight alone will get you to
sucks.
start the whole game over thinking you made the wrong
Yeah.
choice somewhere.
I thought I could play
made the
proud,
mistake.
but maybe fucking not.
Yeah, I made the mistake of going to that Tarzan world instead of the Hercules world, and just never coped with it.
Yeah. You went in the
That is
wrong
so
order.
funny.
Fucked everything up.
Yeah. Dude, I think that, I will say the bad side of video games is it's probably the angriest I've ever gotten in my entire life was while playing a game. Like,
What
just,
game? Let's dig.
I
What
mean,
game has made you the
oh boy.
most
I
fucking
mean,
mad?
there's like probably 5 where I just felt like just pure hatred.
I've got one. It involves the
I,
gamer score
you,
deal, though.
okay, you go ahead with that then, because I need to think about that.
So, I was telling you guys earlier about how I would go to great lengths to correct my gamer score if it hit an uneven amount. One
Yeah.
time, GRAW, Ghost Recon, whatever Warfare, whichever one it was, but it was the one that was like marketed as GRAW on Xbox 360. Through a long search of games with trophies that would even, or games with achievements that would even out my gamer score, in my budget, I found that game for $5, and I had to get an achievement in multiplayer, which I could do. I could bring like another controller into multiplayer with me, so it'd be like it'd have the 1 in parentheses next to it, and I could put us on different teams, and I would have to have one controller call in a chopper and use the other controller to shoot it down. And I had to do that 100 times. And that's a lengthy process. 100 times is already a lot, but calling in 100 choppers with one controller and using the other one to shoot it down, I had to shoot down 100 choppers in multiplayer. And that game went in the microwave whenever I was done with that. It served its purpose. I think I have a video on an old shitty phone somewhere, on an old like flip phone of me fucking recording the microwave as I put it in the microwave for like 5 seconds, and it got all warped. And that was my justice for putting myself through that shit. And that was, that was mad. That was my own fault. I put myself through that. But like, I've always blamed that game. I don't know why. I just fuck that game.
Yeah. Brandon, you got one before I give mine?
No, go ahead.
Man, do you guys remember this game called Rogue Galaxy on PlayStation 2? It was an RPG made by Level 5 who did a couple of the Dragon Quest games. But it was a pretty cool like anime RPG. Like PS2 was, by the way, was just awesome for like JRPGs
Yeah.
and stuff. So many, like I can't even believe looking back. I was like, man, they were cranking out games like they were easy to make or something. But anyway, yeah, I think I played the game for like 10 hours on PlayStation 2, and then I got to this point where it was a checkpoint, and you guys are going to understand the type of checkpoint I'm talking about. It's like where like you can't go back to town to buy more potions, right? So whatever handicapped, like crippled state you entered before that cutscene is that's your life now.
That's
like
how it is.
in the game. Yes, it is. So okay, so I'll come back to that. But yeah, I remember entering this boss battle and just dying within like 3 minutes was like the max I could last in it. And just I remember like holding the PS2 controller and just like I've always been pretty good about like not breaking my stuff. But like I remember just twisting the controller like and hearing it creak, and then like my wife was my girlfriend at the time, was just like, "You're gonna break the controller," and I was just furious, just raging and I was so mad because I realized, okay, I can't go get more potions or whatever you use to heal yourself. I can't go buy more gear. Yeah, it's so, and I played this for 10 hours, so I literally like have to start my game over from the beginning. So I just wasted 10 hours of my life. Now, whether or not that was the situation, and there was probably some way out of it, I just couldn't figure out. Um, I don't know, but yeah, I remember just being like couldn't even reconcile like what to do in that situation. Besides, yeah, I never played it again. Like defeated, like I was just defeated by that game in that situation. I was so mad. So yeah, that's definitely up there, top five.
As far as like the feeling how like breakable one of these can be
Yeah.
in a moment, Elden Ring did that a lot to me. And I was playing on the PS4 Pro at the time, and feeling how like I wanted to break that controller in half so bad when I played that game. Every time I played that game, for just like other of the Souls-like games didn't really do that to me, because I would like
Oh, really?
I fell in love with Bloodborne. I loved Bloodborne. I remember like dying by something, get stressed out and squeezing my controller, but Elden Ring was the first game where I convinced myself that I was going to break the controller before I ever beat the game. And I was like depending on breaking that controller. So like I could pull out my PS4 controller and we could listen to it, and it's the most creaky, crunchy fucking controller. Like it's soft on the inside because I have twisted it and folded it and been like, today's the fucking day, motherfucker. Like I'm gonna break this bitch in half. If I don't beat this boss, I'm gonna achieve something. Like it. That was my
That's
goal
so
through playing
funny.
that. That's one of the maddest I've been playing a game, just because it stressed me out so bad that like you just you'd go run up to a boss the first time and get his health all the way down to a fucking bee's dick of next to nothing, and then you'd fight him for 8 hours straight, and you couldn't even get him halfway to what you got him to the first time you walked up to him. And
That's
that
so funny.
feeling, I hate it.
I love every second of what you felt. But I would say this, like, I know exactly how you felt, but like Elden Ring, I was so ready for after Sekiro. Like Sekiro, I had this one boss battle that I literally played for 5 hours straight until I got into a trance and beat it.
Was
But
it
it
the
was like
last one?
no, something I had already gone insane at that point. Like I can't the boss, I think it was like one version of Owl, like the version like fighting an optional boss fighting your dad character or whatever. For some reason I had the hardest time with it. I watched a couple people do it and I was like, oh, that looked pretty easy. But yeah, it was literally like 4 hours of just
Hmm.
fighting this boss over and over again until I just memorized like a 70 move pattern to beat him. And people nearby just being like, hey, use these items to make your sword more powerful. And I just refused to do it because I was like, no, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to use the item. I'm going to get used to it. I'm going to run out. And then my strategy is screwed because I don't have that item anymore. And I'm not going to go farm for it and all this stuff. But yeah, so anyway, point is, by the time I got to Elden Ring, like that had broken me so bad in Sekiro that like Elden Ring, I was just like, not gonna do this again. Like, and I'm gonna go do all this easy stuff and grind and all that. I did
Take
not
your
have a
time with
hard
it.
time with Elden. I did not have a hard time with Elden Ring. I think it's their easiest game, but we can come back to that some other time. But
That's
anyway,
interesting. Okay.
Well, for
Okay.
for me, it's not
I'm gonna go
necessarily
ask that
like
controller that sounds like a fucking freaky boat.
for me, it's not necessarily the hardest game or the most frustrated I've been, but the most recent that I've had something like that with. I mentioned the Spider-Man issue, but just this past weekend, I even told all you like I completed God of War, Ragnarok, and I was like, beforehand
you
I
did
was
beat
like,
it?
yeah, I did. And
Nice.
beforehand
Okay.
I was thinking, I was like, no, this isn't one I'm going to try to 100%. And then after beating it and really liking like the last half of the story, like so much
Mm-hmm.
that I was like, you know what, I might 100% this. And then I I was doing one of the grave, I can't remember what they're called, like the grave site summonings or
The
whatever.
Berserkers?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
faced one berserker and like I can't remember which one it was at this point. And honestly, like the game's not that difficult in that sense, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was about this one boss, and probably died to it 100 times or so, and then like the very last time, I mean, the health bar was down so far like I couldn't even see anything on it, and then still got killed by something I just couldn't have avoided. And I was like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. I don't want to 100% this now. Like, if I've got to do this again, I
Yeah,
don't want to do it.
I get it.
But
No, I
I
totally
guess
get it.
using that topic, um, I guess to transition. So how do you guys view like difficulty in games, and how does that affect your
Mm.
view of gaming in general?
I mean, I make the mistake of putting everything usually on the hardest difficulty. Um, like I said earlier, it plays into like how I don't really complete a lot of things. If I've got an option to choose a difficulty, if it's something which I'm passionate about, a lot of things, like a lot of things I just really like a lot of shit. So any game that I even halfway think I'm going to be super passionate about, I'm putting it on the highest difficulty. And I think what has made me do that is games like Kingdom Hearts, where if you beat the game on proud mode, you get extra cutscenes, you get extra stuff that you wouldn't get if you. And I feel like there's like a FOMO of, if I don't play this on the highest difficulty, but then I'm gonna miss something. But like there's games like Skyrim or Elder Scrolls games. Absolutely not. I'm not putting that on the highest difficulty because it is not fun to get knocked around like a rag doll whenever you walk in. You walk in a room and a Draugr just hits you with a great sword and you just ragdoll up against the wall. Like I want to be able to take hits in a game like that, especially like I like playing those games in first person. Playing Fallout or Skyrim or whatever of those, like at a higher difficulty, no. But if it's like something like a story driven game that, I mean, I could probably do more research to find out if I'm going to miss anything as far as scenes for playing on hard. But why do that? That's not fun. I just want to put it on the hardest difficulty just because, like, why not? Get good, right?
Yeah, that's right. Now, I get, yeah, I get where you're coming from. Okay, so just recently have I gotten more willing to like reduce the difficulty, right? So I was a little bit more in the camp that Barrett's in, where it's like it kind of feels like cheating to like not challenge yourself, right? And I think
Mm.
that's the kind of the driving force between like obsessing over the difficulty. But I guess so my main stance on it is I want to play, I guess, more or less at the recommended difficulty, which is usually the medium, which honestly, for people who play as many games as we do, is probably too easy for the most part. I found, because it's supposed to be a difficulty that's suitable for the populace, right? And that's people who don't buy every new game that they can when it comes out. It's people who pick up a game and they're just, that looks cool. So that can be too easy, but overall, I feel like they've customized a lot of the gameplay to be built around that difficulty, right? Um, and design bosses, but based off of how much damage they take and how much damage they do and other status effects. Because when you go up to that hardest difficulty, it's like a different game to me. They all of a sudden, like, poison damage just eats your health, and this one hit you can't counter it, but at the standard difficulty you can. So nowadays, I feel like the design of the game almost changes in ways that it didn't in the past. So that's like one thing. So usually I try and play a medium. there are certain games that I'm obsessed with and I love, and I'll be like, okay, I want to get that trophy, right? Or I want to get that secret cutscene or weapon. That motivates me a ton. So I'll play it like Dead Space. I've played that game 15 times, and I've played on the hardest difficulty multiple times where you can't die and stuff just because you get like a cool suit. So that'll motivate me. But if there's not a reward and I'm struggling with the game, and I just want to experience the story. And it's not a game that so here's the thing: I'll play games that like I'm not super passionate about. Like I'm passionate about them enough to want to finish it and experience it, but like I don't feel like proud of that particular game of how I beat it. So I just want to see the story and collect some items and view the graphics and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll turn it down nowadays. Like I was playing Horizon Forbidden West, and like every time I died, I was just like, I don't want to play this. So I was like, hey, well, you know what would make this better? Is if like I wasn't dying at all. So I just like turned it on easy, and all of a sudden I was having a great time. I was like, oh, this is a ton of fun. These machines aren't taking 50 arrows to destroy, and I'm getting the items I need. Now I can upgrade and craft my armor and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my complicated, I guess, relationship with difficulty in games. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. But I totally get where you're coming from, Barrett. Like there's part of me that still feels guilty for changing the difficulty. There's just no
I
way
feel like I'm
around
cheating
it.
myself out of something at a certain point for sure. But like, I couldn't really single out which games other than like, Elder Scrolls or whatever that I definitely don't. I don't go for the hardest difficulty on everything, but if it's a game that I'm like, I want to play this and I want to beat this, and it's, I'm, if I think that like the ultimate experience is going to come through the harder version, because like you said, like medium sometimes can be like way too easy. And I know that I need to, in some games, need to just accept that just to get the story. But sometimes like the story and the challenge complement each other so well that like if it takes me 15 times to beat a boss in Kingdom Hearts to finally get that cutscene after it, like that's as equivalent to beating a boss in Elden Ring that took you 100 tries. It's that like there's I don't know, there's an achievement system kind of to the progression of the game whenever something's hard and challenging. But I definitely don't want to challenge myself on everything. But I think I've just limited what games I play now so down so much that like I don't really like the games I'm playing now. I'm probably just gonna play on the hardest difficulty, just because like I'm a like Halo Legendary. There's games that have tainted my brain as far as like just the difficulty matters. And
Yeah. One thought you made me think of that I didn't share before is like, and I've thought of this in the past, is I almost wish there wasn't difficulty settings for
yeah,
games.
just the game is designed, and this is how you play
Yeah,
it. This is how you experience it. Yeah,
exactly. And like part of me hates that idea, right? Because there's a lot of games I wouldn't finish just because I'd be like, it's not worth it to me. I'm not enjoying the world enough to finish this. So I would just stop playing it. But
right.
overall, I think you make the point about Elden Ring. Like a lot of people, like you talk about difficulty in games, Brandon. Like that's such a good example because a ton of people are like, add an easy mode. I want to experience the world. I want to experience this one. I'm like, I love that I'm only playing it the way they designed it, right? Because whatever that experience is, whether it's too hard or too easy, or you hate it or you love it, you're gonna play it the way they designed it. You have no choice. And like, there's something like obsessive I have where it's like I want to play as close to what the designers had in mind as possible. And sometimes, like to your point, Barrett, like that is the hardest difficulty, right? Like I've heard like Blizzard talk about it, like with Diablo. They're like, "Oh, you want the real hardcore experience? Like go play it on the hardest difficulty." And
Yeah,
that's who we made that. That's for the fans. And you're like, "Oh, so wait, I'm not even playing the game. This is probably the designers wanted me to." So yeah, I guess the last thought, all that to say is, I kind of wish that there wasn't even an option to change it, and you either sucked it up and beat it, or you didn't.
more games definitely need to embrace like the Elden Ring route where there's no
Yeah.
difficulty. This is how the game was designed, but it does. I understand also from like a marketing standpoint, it can affect sales if a game is known to be hard or difficult or challenging. So I mean, it's a catch-22, but like it definitely worked for Elden Ring. But I think it's because it's in that camp with all the Souls likes, like they don't have a difficulty. You pick up the controller and you play it, and you either get good or you quit. You don't beat it, which,
Yeah,
like,
that's kind of cool, right? Like it's kind of like it forces you to get good at it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's, you could argue it all day about if that's a good thing or bad thing, but at the end of the day, um, even though I hated it in Sekiro, that boss, it still made it one of the most, like it's still what I didn't say earlier was it's one of my favorite games, like ever. And I'm like so glad that I did push through it. Like how many games can say that, you know? And I'm not even sure if it's because it was hard, but that's just one part of it. But boy, did it make it memorable when you do beat that boss, and you
oh
fought him
yeah,
4 hours straight. In the same way games were memorable when we were kids because they were the same way. There wasn't usually a difficulty option. Heck, there wasn't even a save option on a lot of the Nintendo games, right? Or the cartridge games and 8-bit and 32-bit games and stuff. So yeah, what do you think, Brandon?
I mean, you two both touched on games that have kind of shaped my opinion on this, and I've always been like the type of player that plays on whatever the default is, whether that was medium, whatever it was. I always play on default. The only game I didn't do that with was Halo, and that's because like it was socially in school, like it was such a like a status thing whether you could play on legendary or not. Like, I,
or like Guitar
That's
Hero
a
on
good one.
expert.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Like
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Guitar Hero is another big one, but
you're building to get better.
I mean, it was like, I mean, yeah, it was definitely like a social status thing, whether you could do it or not amongst friends.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
I've recently, like, before Infinite came out, I went back and played Halo, and I played it just on the base difficulty just because I wanted to get through like all the games in such a short amount of time. But yeah, that's definitely one where I played on the hardest difficulty. But then to the other end of things, like I played Horizon Zero Dawn like the same way as you did Forbidden West, where it was one of those games like from a story and narrative standpoint of like I want to play this game, it's on my backlog, but I don't want to die 100 times and have to see the same cutscenes over and over again. Like I
Hmm.
want to experience this game. So yeah, I played it on the easiest setting available to get through it. And I think to some extent there's a detriment there to where I don't feel like I faced enough of adversity to get fully immersed in the story.
Hmm.
But on the other end of the spectrum, if you have to watch the same cutscene over and over again, it takes as much away as well. And for like I said, finished God of War Ragnarok most recently, and I played it on the easiest setting because I think to some extent there's like a power fantasy there, and especially with a character like Kratos, like you want to be the most badass in every scene. And
Hmm.
but even with that game though, there were times I went into combat and took it too lightly, and was still surprised. Even on the easiest setting, was still surprised by how much of a challenge it could be at times. Um, there was okay. And I think this adds to a little bit of what we talked about earlier as far as like newer features. But with something like God of War, I think developers are becoming more aware of where the difference lies in those difficulties in the sense of like, okay, maybe this person is just playing it for the story to the point where like it's not really easy, medium, difficult, hard, whatever. It's not necessarily categorized that as much anymore. Like God of War's easiest setting is literally called "Give Me Story," and so I think that is
Yeah.
you know one innovative thing where they can kind of cater that way instead of just it being just a general difficulty slider. Like it actually is going to send you down a certain route of what you want out of the game. Um, but I do to some extent like the idea of like the way From Software works, where there's one setting because this is the way we designed it to be, and I know that the From Software games do have stories, but for me, the ones that I've played, honestly, I don't know that I cared as much about the story because it was more of back to like that legendary and Halo feeling. It was more of a social status thing where yeah, I beat this game. Didn't really matter like
Mm.
necessarily what happened story wise, but like these games are known for being so challenging that the most important thing for me was that I did complete it. And
Mm.
I think another game that does that very well is Cuphead. The only problem there is I like the art
Ooh.
direction of that game so much that yeah, it's one of those I
Yeah.
would rather to in another sense I would rather just watch somebody play that than play it myself because there's certain aspects of that game I wouldn't have ever seen if I didn't watch somebody else play because I'm not as good at that game as I'd like to be.
Yeah, Cuphead's an interesting one because I don't know, for some reason the difficulty of the Souls games and the From Software games has always felt appropriate for like what they've defined themselves as. But like Cuphead was such a weird thing for me because I'm like, what when they were designing this, what made them think this has to be a blisteringly hard game that really only, 5% of those who play it will enjoy or get past or have the determination and reflexes to play. I still to this day I'm like, I guess what I'm trying to say is the difficulty in that game doesn't feel appropriate, right?
There
I'm
there
just like
definitely is a
I'm
sense
like
of that.
I'm like it's a
It looks
cartoon.
like it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like
But it
that's a great
has
point though.
some sort of like Souls level of like you've just got to get used to a platforming pattern to do something, and it is just over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And but it is like that's the kind of game
So
where I'm like I'm glad they turned it into more, so it's like got a show or something out or
yeah.
coming out. I don't know where it's at with that, but like I like that it's evolved to that because artistically that game is really cool, and it's cool that they designed a game like that with the intent of being stupid hard. Like, yeah, this game looks really
Mm-hmm.
approachable, and then you start playing it, and you're like, this like
This is this is
this makes me
this is
feel a
not
certain
fun.
type of way.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's like it's like there's a whole other layer to the conversation about difficulty. It's like, yeah, I feel a certain way about it, but like, you know, like Elden Ring, for example, like that feels right to me. Like, and I feel like there's opportunity in Elden Ring. It's not, maybe, I said earlier that it felt like their easiest game, but it felt that way because I felt like I could go and get strong doing other things and go level up. And there's tons of other stuff to do. Where in their older games, I felt like, oh, there's nothing left to like explore that I haven't already explored. I got to beat this boss. It's a roadblock. There's so much stuff in Elden Ring where I thought like, oh, I can go ride around for hours and find caves and weapons and items and all that different stuff. And that's exactly what I did. So when I got to those bosses, I felt like, oh yeah, this is doing a reasonable amount of damage compared to what it was like in the older games. But what I was gonna say is that overall felt right to me, like where the difficulty was at. But something that is annoying if you're just talking about difficulty in games is like so many games think that they're going to be cooler now by making themselves blisteringly hard. Like all these games where people are like, oh, this is like Dark Souls, or oh, yeah, it's like the Dark
Yeah.
Souls of this, it's Dark Souls of that. And I'm just like, the whole thing like that prevented me for years from getting into the Souls games is that's all people talked about. It wasn't until I realized
Exactly.
like, oh, there's like really great lore. There's like really cool story that if you dig into it, or the weapons are awesome, right? Like Like it's actually fun to play. It wasn't until I realized that I even wanted to touch it. But all these other games I feel like are coming out, these indie developers and stuff are making these games where it's just like, let's just make it super hard to get that core audience that's going to stream it and have a fit because it's entertaining to watch. And meanwhile, I'm like, okay, I get the marketing piece of it, like you mentioned, Barrett. But I look at that and I'm just like, okay, so you're just trying to now be a hard game for the sake of it. Like that's not just the kind of game you are. It's just you're going out of your way to make it piss people off. So I don't really like that. I think that's annoying, especially for people who actually have, like families and stuff that they spend 12 straight hours of trying to beat one boss, you know. But anyway, just another rant.
No, I had that same kind of feeling with Dark Souls though. Like starting with Demon Souls. I remember my first attempt at playing Demon Souls, and it was when it was it made it down to being like a $20 game on PlayStation 3. I remember finally trying it and not realizing that the first boss, what you could go past it or something, and just getting like realizing like how hard that was. And I remember trying to pick up, I think, Dark Souls 1 and just being like, okay, this just isn't for me, and putting it down and being like, okay, that game's like on another level. It's going to have to be like my main focus if I'm going to be into it. So instead, like, I didn't really dislike it. I just was like, well, that's just not for me. But then Bloodborne came around, and that was the one that like that sucked me in, dude. I think design wise and world design, that's probably got my favorite artistic edge to it. Like it looked so cool. That fucking axe that was like a starter weapon that you could extend into the bigger axe. Like to me, I think that's the game where I started going from like wanting to play like a rogue, a little quick guy, to someone that was slow and calculated. Like Bloodborne is where I changed the tide of how I play any game where I'm swinging a sword. And so like different games like that can like bring a certain part out of me to enjoy. But like I didn't dislike Elden Ring, but I did get to a point like the Dark Souls games where I'm like, this game is just like too much. I spent 6 hours fighting this one boss, and thank God I finally beat it. But there's a bigger fish. Like I just know I'd beat one boss and know that like, but like the way you say that you were playing it, it's kind of like how I play Kingdom Hearts. If I start Kingdom Hearts 2, I am grinding Destiny Island in the beginning of that game until I'm level 20 before I leave it. That way the first 2-3 worlds, they don't matter. Like it, just getting a little bit of an edge. That way it makes the bosses not so challenging, and you can actually have fun with it rather than like have to dodge roll, heal. Please God, Goofy, heal me. You have 4 potions. Like,
oh man, getting hit in those games when he's got the potion in midair, like you go throw it up and then you get hit in the back. You're just like
slow motion fall back when you're like, he was mid heal.
Like, yeah, who thought that was a good idea?
Sora.
Yeah. Yes, Sora. McDonald's voice. Oh my God. Yeah, I can hear it too. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, dude.
Well, hey, listen, guys, this has been an absolute pleasure. I got to run here soon.
Yeah.
Or now.
We're approaching that 2-hour mark, which is it's been a good conversation though.
Yeah, it's been great.
Well, yeah. There'll be plenty of more of these for anyone watching. I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation. This is our first one of these, so it's trial and error, and thanks for your patience and watching and listening. And hopefully we'll be doing this like every week, at least once. I had a great time talking about this. I actually got way more comfortable than I thought it would and stuff. So
For me
I'm
too,
really excited to do this. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, there's
Well, guys, I'm out. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say like there's even some things as far as like on our history that I know No, I didn't get to touch on. So I know there's definitely a lot there for I think for us to visit in the future. And then I know we didn't get to do it this time, but you know, also planning on doing some gameplays as well. I don't know if those
Yeah.
are within the weekly schedule or if it's more of a side project, but maybe we can get to that next time and play some games together or watch each other play games. One of the two.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I want to do all of that after, especially after having this conversation and stuff. And we've through this we get to know each other better and all that. But like, yeah, part of me wants to like play through Elden Ring together. Now I was thinking about how much fun that would be and how crazy that would have a play. That'd be like a 200-hour
Can I ride on your
playthrough.
back?
Dude, you can, yeah, I will
Will you
carry your
carry
corpse.
me?
I will drag your corpse. Dude, I've beat Elden Ring like 7 times and
Look,
platinum
dude,
the game.
being good at that game runs in your family, bro.
Yeah,
I am
Dude,
confident
it's
playing
like a
that with you.
religion. Dude, I know I think by heart now I know where everything in the game is. Like every item, checkpoint, boss strategy, to where it could be like, yeah, okay, hit him now.
Please,
Hit him
God,
now. Run away.
that is a great, that's how I want to experience that for sure. I want to play through
Dude,
Elden
it would
Ring
be so much
with like,
fun.
I didn't get to do a lot with the multiplayer whenever we were playing it, and I don't own it. I had someone's primary whenever
Hmm.
we were playing. I think I had Noah's primary or something, but I would definitely be willing to like to get that game and us all play through it. That'd be a lot of fun, dude, because
Yeah,
I mean I rage. Those game like
that's fine. That's the better.
hopefully
All the better.
that sounds like terrifying but super exciting at the same time.
Yeah, it'd be an
And
adventure.
for 3 weeks in a row, we're still stuck on the same fucking boss. That's how I see it. But I mean, probably not. But
Well, as we get like the streaming and podcast stuff figured out, hopefully doing that in addition to doing a session that's just talking or one of us playing a game like we talked about, we can just kind of throw it on to where it's not necessarily a huge commitment, but we can
yeah,
stream it. We can get it out to an audience and not have to worry too much about the setup and stuff like that. So we'll see, just an idea for the future, but I do think it'd be a lot of fun. Um, so yeah. Well, cool.
yeah, great ideas. Sweet.
Cool, guys.
I guess that's it
Well,
for this week.
yep.
yep.
See ya.
You
See
guys
you
have
next
a good
time.
night. See you next time. I like that.